All right, have and have not fans. If you noticed in the trailer for next week's episode, The Surgeon, it looks like there is a mystery man speaking with Mitch Malone sitting at the Iron Bone bar. And he vaguely says something along the lines of the family is going to keep coming after him until they get the money back, referring to Vinny. And the voice sounded a bit unrecognizable, like it was a bit hoarse and scratchy. Well, if you haven't guessed it already, this mystery man is Vinny Malone, or Uncle Vinny, according to Mitch here. And this video is about, just kind of breaking down who Vinny Malone is. And really, we're going to cover his key scenes within the past season of the Haves and the Have-Nots. He appeared, if memory serves, in the first time he physically appeared on screen was last year in the episode Every 6 Months, but he was mentioned several times from the episode that began the season, I believe, Afraid of Flames. Up until that point, Mitch was saying, I can set up a meeting with my uncle, my family, to see about this money, but I wouldn't recommend it because of, I guess you could say, like, the easiest way for me to put it is like the blood contract, your blood money. If you take that money, then 45,000 isn't enough for your whole family to be killed, but it's enough for you to be. But I mean, are you sure you want to do this? And Mitch, I mean, think about it this way: Benny borrowed $45,000, and it seemed like Mitch was telling him 45,000 times not to do it. I mean, I think I made a joke on Twitter about a year ago, and Mitch liked the tweet. I said, I wish I had Mitch around before I borrowed money from Sally Mae for college, because I definitely would have paid more attention to the terms and conditions before signing those documents. But yeah, so Mitch and Vinny Mitch and Vinny come face to face at the Ironbone bar, and Benny's there in the episode Every 6 Months. And the interesting thing about it is, the quick family dynamic. As soon as Mitch arrives, it's like, hey, how you doing? It's like, you want something to drink, something to eat? And it's like, no, no, no. And it's like, don't tell me are you trying out for the family business? Like, no, no. It's like, not trying to get your hands dirty, huh? And you got them dirty last time. Mitch is like, yeah. And I'm like, what the hell is he referring to? I didn't realize that. Unless Vinny is referring to the Warlock situation, because between Candace and Mitch and his family, they were able to arrange for him to be killed off. But I don't know if that's exactly what they're referring to. Who knows? But it is interesting, because that leads me to believe that Mitch has done dealings with his family before, which isn't completely surprising. I mean, Mama Rose did tell David that Mitch isn't against calling up when he needs a favor, but it doesn't seem like he abuses his, I guess you could say, quote unquote, family connections, family ties. As let's say Jim, who did save the Malones from going to jail in, I guess you could say exposing operations, but he really did stack up favors, especially when the show was on the air. I'm not really counting the favors he must have used before episode 1, just to put it that way. But folks, and I know I keep saying this, Vinny pretty much was reluctant to lend the money to Benny. Remember, $45,000, because he was black, but also was like, I could tell, I know that's a bad impression, but I'm not Italian. I'm not, anything like that. But he was pretty much saying, I can just look at him and tell. But then Mitch is like, well, is it because he's black? And he's like, well, his sister helped us out. Who's your sister? Candace Young. It is like, so you're Candace Young brother? He was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, we owe her one. And I wrote it down. Now, I would get the clip, but it's like 4 minutes long. Then, you got to deal with copyright stuff. Trust and believe, I would love to play the full clip, but, then the video will be flagged. But Vinny Malone said, okay, we owe her one. And I've been saying it since that episode. Candace is going to be in hot water, because if she ever needs that favor from the Malones, guess what? That favor was used up. So, folks, based off that dialogue, we owe her one, in my mind, I thought the favor that was owed to her by the Malone family was utilized by the loan. But I will admit, I can see how people can make the argument. Well, Jeremy, remember Mitch said that Candace should go into the restaurant because his grandmother, Rose, wanted to thank her in person. And, the family did owe her a favor as a sign of gratitude. So as to whether or not that favor was utilized, I can see it both ways, but I still am standing on my ground that the favor was used by Benny unknowingly to get that loan, because when he said, okay, we owe her one, and He's like, yeah, she helped us out with Warlock. And then, what Vinny was like, wait, what's going on here? So he didn't know what was really going on. It was like the conversation was happening over his head. But remember that whole, oh, she was granted one wish didn't really come up in the conversation. All Vinny said was, okay, we owe her one, which could have meant many things to like somebody who was in Vinny's position. So he wouldn't know that the favor to get the loan was something that was Candace's, but so that's how I look at it. And basically, it's every 6 months, hence the name of the episode. $45,000 total, but there's interest, $9,000, because every 6 months it's $18,000. That's pretty much it. It's 3 payments, $18,000, $9,000 interest. So yes, Benny had that stack of $45K, but he needed $9,000 interest in order to, I guess you could say, solidify the payment off. So to be completely honest, he was better off, as Benny said, Mitch said, get the tow truck. Or if you didn't want to get the tow truck, Benny, why not just pay $18,000 every 6 months? I mean, you could just get a job, and I'm pretty sure within 18 months, you can make $9,000 to put to the money, because again, $45,000, 2 payments is $36,000 right there. So, I mean, again, you could have had every 6, but whatever, plot convenience. But in any case, he gets the money, and then he leaves, and then he tries to get the money back. But then, of course, Benny and Vinny, try saying that 3 times fast without being confused, they don't really meet face to face again because of the fact that Wyatt shows up on the scene, and I believe the episode The Rabbit and the Water Moccasin, leading into the 3rd quarter, when Vinny actually gets his throat slit by Wyatt because of the fact that the bartender Jerry said, you know what, look at his car keys, he's a rich kid, he has the money. Wyatt bought the drugs from Vinny before, but then of course Jim poured it down the sink, and Vinny was suspicious, like, where did all those drugs go? You're not telling me what's going on. And not to mention the fact that, Wyatt came up in the bar pretty much out of his element, wanting to get high, and had all that money on him. Vinny was naturally suspicious that he was a cop, but he wasn't. So he got high. Then he came back, tried to get more drugs without the money up front. Jerry pretty much gave Wyatt the vote of confidence. Like, look at his car keys, rich kid, he has the money. Because Wyatt, at that point, if I'm not mistaken, had withdrew all the money he could in 1 day's time. So the next morning, that's when he would take more money out of the ATM. But because of the fact that Candace had intercepted the wire transfer, the money wasn't there. But if memory serves, at that point, Oscar had told Jim the money's going to be back in your account the next morning. So even if Candace didn't take the money, Wyatt would still have an empty account. So with that being said, Vinny got into it with Wyatt. I think he actually knocked him upside the head with a gun. Then he was kicking him around, and I'm surprised he didn't shoot him. But that's when Wyatt cracked the beer bottle and then slit his throat, and then freaked out. So he sobered up pretty damn fast after that, and tried to clean up his fingerprints in the bathroom and get the security camera footage, from the I think it was like a VHS tape. My gosh, when was the last time he saw one of those? And then Jim showed up, tried to help clean up. But honestly, Jim left fingerprints everywhere. So, yeah. I mean, if anything, aside from security camera footage from the outside, because it did show Wyatt and Jim coming out of the bar, Benny going into the bar. And, I'm surprised, if it wasn't for security footage, you would think that the cops or whatnot, or the Malones getting fingerprints, would think Jim did it, because he was the one that reached into his back pocket to see who it was, and it was a Malone. Then he tried to throw things across the bar to make it look like a fight. Then Benny shows up that evening, not night, but that evening, because I think the guy coming out the back said, we don't open until, 8 or 9 o'clock. And I think Benny got there around 7-ish, and then he found Benny on the floor, because remember, he had showed up to return the $45K. And that's how, Benny was held at gunpoint till he got away. Mitch showed up, thought that Benny did it. It's like, why didn't you call the cops? And I'm like, well, Benny didn't even have a chance to, because he wanted to call Mitch, but that guy refused to let him do so. And then Vinny's in the hospital. And moving forward, Vinny's in the hospital for surgery, obviously, because he had his throat slit. And I still do not know how in the world he survived that, because remember, he told Wyatt, tomorrow morning, if you don't have my money, I'm going to F you up. And of course, he went to the bathroom, woke up Wyatt, dragged him out. Then he went to the ATM, wasn't able to get the money. And then if you look at that episode, which leads to more confusing things, because remember, I get it. Some scenes happen at the exact same time, but one could argue that what if Vinny didn't wake up Wyatt until the next afternoon or evening? But given the amount of drugs and money that Wyatt owed him, I doubt Vinny would like let him sleep until like 4 o'clock the next day. That's just my assumption there. So remember that in that same episode, Derek had met Hannah outside of Catherine's house at like 6 o'clock when she got off, because she was about to go home to make dinner, not breakfast, for Benny. And then later in that same episode, you know, that's when Benny went to the actual bar. So with the events of Wyatt slitting Vinny's throat that morning took place, then he was bleeding out for probably almost 11 hours, and he still survived. But then again, we just had Madison cracked upside the head with a crowbar, and he's seemingly okay. Veronica fell from a great distance from the balcony, and she had tense muscles. So having somebody slit their throat and bleed out on the floor for almost half a day, he can survive that. And basically, you know, he tells Mitch to go to the bar, check out the ATM transaction, and then find out who this kid is, because he wants him brought to him personally rather than the family taking care of it. So that's when Mitch goes down there, finds out Wyatt Cryer did it to get Benny off the hook, but the hit was already called. And my biggest question was, what is Vinny going to think and do once he finds out that, you know what, the family knows about this, now this kid's in big trouble? Because remember, at this point, they're still looking for Benny for a crime he didn't commit, because for whatever reason, it still hasn't reached the totem pole of the Malones to, hey, call off the hit. So that explains why Benny was being shot at the hotel parking lot. That's why the Malones, I don't think they did it, but, you know, they were, if it wasn't for that random person on the bicycle that stabbed Benny, then the Malones would have taken him out. So, yeah. With that being said, folks, you know, Vinny Malone is back next week in the episode The Surgeon. I believe from behind the scenes photos, he's actually going to have a scar on his like neck, throat area, which actually makes sense. So due to the cuts, I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if his vocal cords have some damage. But the question is, will the hit be able to will the hit get called off in time? Will Benny, it feels like I'm narrating Dragon Ball Z. He's like, in the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, will Benny survive the attack from the Malones? Will the truth be revealed that Benny did not slit Vinny's throat? But at the same time, if he doesn't have the interest money, what will happen? Well, technically, he does have the $9,000 interest, because he almost has $9 million in his joint bank account. But I digress. So with that being said, folks, if you did not know who Vinny Malone was, because either you forgot who he was, because if I'm not mistaken, he was only, not counting the episodes he was laying on the floor bleeding out, he was only in about less than half a dozen episodes, if memory serves, especially based off what I just listed off. Some fans probably didn't even come into the show until late 2018. So once again, Vinny Malone was probably under the radar. But just so you know who shows up to Mitch in the next episode, it is definitely Vinny. Do you think he'll be able to save Benny's life? Do you think he will take the $45,000 back without the interest? Because to be completely honest, I mean, my argument is this: if I were Benny, is like, look, if the Malones are going to kill me anyway, let me speak my piece. You accuse me of putting one of your own in the hospital. I got shot at. I was being chased down multiple times. So the least you can do, no offense now, could you at least just take this $45,000 back without the interest? And I know there's some blood on it, but you know, it was blood money anyway, right? Okay, I'm going to leave now. So I feel like, you know, in fairness, that's what should happen. Hence why, you know, this whole Mitch going to talk to Mama Rose thing is like, I'm wondering why this has been so dragged out, because I would just think that, you know, Mitch being a reasonable guy would try to, you know, appeal to Mama Rose in terms of, well, remember, my friend Benny was being chased down for no reason. So I don't really see why you're doing it, because remember, even though I swear they said the money was already given back to the Malones. Remember, if the money wasn't given back, then that means his first payment would be $18,000, because he still has the 45. So the Malones now are simply chasing him down because of the whole Vinny's throat being slit situation. And if that gets cleared up, then the Malones would have no reason to chase down Benny, because even though Mitch was asking about him turning the money in without the interest, if he didn't turn the money in, then that means they shouldn't go after him. But I just think that's kind of, you know, inconsistent writing, but we shall see next week. But thanks so much for tuning in, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow Vinny on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave his information on the screen right there. But thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video. Congratulations on making it to the end of this video. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, as well as leaving your thoughts in the comment section below so we can keep the conversation going. On the left hand side of the screen, you should see a picture of Jeffrey Harrington. You can click on him in order to subscribe, but also hit the bell notification icon. That way you don't miss out on any new content. Also, you should see some videos appearing on the screen as well that I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy if you enjoyed the one you just saw. But also, be sure to follow me on social media such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Links to all my social media will be in the description below. And in order to help this channel hit 100,000 subscribers, I'm going to need your help. So make sure to share this video as well as the channel around with all of your friends on your own social media. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next video.